All right, so today we're going to be talking about the different tools that you're going to be needing to build your camper van from scratch. And, you might be starting this from, this might be your first DIY project, or you might be a seasoned professional. And if you are, I don't know why you're watching this video, but anyways, these are the tools that you're going to need to build your camper van, and the ones that I wish I had at the time when I first started doing it, because there are some that would have made the job easier that I didn't have, that I'm going to recommend to you guys, just based on experience. So we're going to start with tool number one. So tool number one is going to be a jigsaw. So the jigsaw is going to be super useful for a lot of things, like, vans have like a lot of like weird curves and stuff you're going to have to cut, if you're going to make plywoods and that kind of stuff. And maybe sometimes a little corner or like little blocks that you're going to be cutting out, like that you wouldn't be able to do with tool number two, which is a circular saw. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So the jigsaw, you're going to be using it for that, just to get like your your defined cuts, the ones that are not just straight lines. And also it's what you're going to use to cut into your van if you're going to install roof vents, which I sincerely hope that you are. Just make sure to get a kit of saw blades that go with it that have like a variety. So, like the ultra fine saw blades, which are the ones you're going to use for metal, and the more coarse ones, which you're going to use for wood. And, sometimes you could even use the more fine ones for wood, depending on how nice of a cut you want. But yeah, just make sure to get yourself a nice assortment of blades and to change them regularly, so you're not like working harder than you should be. Like I do sometimes because I'm hard-headed. But anyway, so that was tool number one. Tool number two is going to be a circular saw, like I said. So you might have a miter saw, you might even have a saw bench, and if you do, then by all means use that. But I just prefer the circular saw because it's more portable, and especially when you pair it with tool number three, which is the rip cut, which is a jig from Craig, which will allow you to basically mimic a saw bench, but it's like so much more portable, and you can actually use it just one person versus a saw bench where you might be better off with two people. So if you really want to work alone, I would recommend the circular saw with the jig. I think it's a lot better. You're going to be using it to cut your plywoods and all of that stuff, so super useful. Now, tool number four is going to be another kind of like jig, but it's not really a jig. It's just a square, which looks like a triangle, but it's basically used to cut straight lines. So, like, to mark, when you're going to put it on your 1x6s or your 2x4s, and you just measure so you can draw your line, and even lean your circular saw again so you cut straight lines, even the jigsaw for that matter. So it's just basically a tool that you're going to use to guide your saws so you're cutting straight lines, so you're not just going at it by hand or by eye. Make sure your lines are actually straight, because lumber nowadays is pretty expensive, so you don't want to waste, and you want to do a nice job. So that's tool number four. Tool number five I'm going to recommend is an electric sander, because you could do it by hand, but the electric sander is so much nicer. With that, you're going to get some 40 grit sandpaper to really like destroy the wood. If there's like ever anything sticking out and you really want to get rid of wood, like don't go 60 grit, like just go 40 grit. You don't need the 60 grit. And get a 120 grit or above if you want to do some like nice finishing, sanding stuff. Okay, that's all you pretty much need for that. So that was number five. Number six. So now we're going to be getting into some specialized tools that I wish I would have had. And there's two of them, and I'm going to edit in the clip so you know what I'm talking about, because I'm just going to describe them. But they're basically tools that are used to trace outlines of like corners or curves or particular shapes that your van might have. One of them has like a pencil attachment, so you're just kind of like tracing the contour, and the pencil kind of scribes the contour as you're tracing it with the little tip. The only problem with that one is that you're going to be losing some matter. You're going to be having like a loss of 1 or 2 inches for it to be able to trace, right? Hard to explain, but hopefully the video, the clips I edit in will outline what I'm talking about. And then there's another type, which is kind of like, it's just kind of like these like thin metal rods that move up and down. and those can be adjusted to take the exact shape of any contour or corner that you're trying to cut. And then you take the tool itself and then you put it on your wood, and then you can actually trace. It's kind of like you're creating like a projection, some sort of the contour, which is really cool. That one is the one I recommend the most. So they're both like 10 bucks. So I would suggest picking both of them up on Amazon. I'll leave the links in the description, and you guys are gonna like have so much of a better time when it comes to like the weird corners and sometimes curves that your van has to offer. Okay, so number 7, now we're gonna get into drills, okay? And you know, professionals, they always recommend having like a drill and an impact drill. But personally, I just did everything with the drill. I still to this day don't even own an impact drill. I don't see the point. I mean, it does help a little bit when you're screwing things in, but personally, like, it really doesn't make much of a difference to me to justify having a second tool there. Or I guess you could kind of like only use the impact really, because you're gonna not really be drilling much holes, except maybe in the metal when you're gonna be cutting your roof, and sometimes in the wood if you just want to like get the jigsaw in there to like cut a circle or something. But yeah, personally, I would just get a drill. Start with a drill, and if you're really struggling with those wood screws, then you can get an impact. But like I said, still to this day, I haven't needed one. So number 8 is going to be the actual hardware. So these are just going to be wood screws. So you only get wood screws, deck screws, whatever you can find that has the square thing bit, and you're going to want to get a variety of sizes, but specifically 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch. Just buy like a huge box of them. Like, it's going to be super expensive, you're going to think, but you're going to use them all, trust me. And it's like a lot of money goes into hardware, but relatively speaking, it's not that much. But get the hardware. You're also going to want to have some 1/2 inches at some point for more decorative purposes. And I've even used sometimes, like, I can't remember if they were 4 or 5 inches, but those are pretty, can come in handy as well for certain like more structural stuff with 2x4. Like, if you want to drill into it like on the 4-inch side, then like I said, you're going to need like 5 to 6 inch screws to go through that. So that's pretty much for that. So that's number 8. Number 9, measuring tape. Obviously, if you don't already have one, then get 1 or 2 of them, because you're always going to forget where you placed it. Sometimes you're going to be like, where the hell is my measuring tape? That's why I recommend the second one. But like, one should get the job done if you remember where you put your things. And so that was number 9. Number 10, I would say a pocket hole jig from Craig as well. The Craig makes it. So basically, you're going to use this to make pocket holes in your 1x4s, 1x6s, 2x4s, whenever you want to drill it at an angle. So it really helps. Like, I mean, you can go straight into it with the screw if you're really good, but the pocket holes just make things look so much more neater and more aesthetic, especially if it shows on the outside. So there's that jig. I think is pretty cool. Number 11, I would say, is another jig as well, and that you're gonna use if you're making your own cabinets. And that's another jig from Craig, which is to make the holes for the hinges. So when you're gonna put your cabinet doors and all that stuff, you're gonna need that. And yeah, so that's pretty much that. I think that's pretty much all there is to it, guys. I mean, obviously there's going to be more tools you can buy along the line that you might find useful, make your job easier. But I mean, with this, it gives you a pretty good approximate of what you have to expect. Like, if you're wondering how much is it going to cost, like how many tools you're going to need to buy if you're starting from scratch. And essentially what you're buying, what you're purchasing, what you're investing in is a tool set. Like, you want to be well equipped, and you want to not have to run to the hardware store every 5 seconds. But if you do want to save some money, what I recommend is buying your tools at a pawn shop, okay? Also, because you get a receipt and you can, put it on your expenses, if you got a business or a freelancer, whatever, and you can justify this somehow, like I did. But you can also look on Marketplace. Marketplace has some pretty good deals, but just be mindful, it's a little bit more difficult to put it as an expense. Like, I know some people do, if you take a picture of the listing, but there's no taxes, so it's a little bit more it's a little bit more difficult when it comes to accounting. So my advice, just go to the pawn shop. Plus you got like usually a 30-day guarantee that the tool actually works. So there's that. And that's pretty much all there is to it, guys. So if this sounds a little bit overwhelming, don't worry. I got plenty of other videos talking about how to do like pretty much every project that you can think of when it comes to building your camper van. So don't forget to check those out. And of course, if you have any questions or need any specific recommendations, even if it's for another DIY project, just leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right, guys, that's it for this one. If you're building something that's meant to last, whether it's a camper van, a business, or just a better way of living, I'm glad you're here. Everything I use, recommend, or offer is linked in the description. Take what works, build your own blueprint, and I'll see you in the next one.